It's pretty obvious that the GTA Definitive Editions are trash, right? In the previous video I showcased 101 issues I found with them. But guess what? The list keeps growing day by day. As crappy as these versions are, I'm not done yet, since there's still more garbage to be found. Here are 101 more things wrong with the GTA Definitive Trilogy. A whole area was removed from the Definitive, and that is the San Fierro impound. It used to be a place with policemen and police cars. Now it's no longer accessible because of the massive invisible ramp barricade. You can drive on it, park your car, do some rolls and so on. You won't enter a place though, since the barricade is here. While wearing the thermal goggles when wasting an NPC, you may notice how over time the body will cool off and not emit the same light as when you wasted them. This added a bit of realism to the game, and it's also not a thing anymore, and the whole time until the NPC despawns, they'll emit the same exact light. If you visit Stoughton Island before unlocking it and go to the lift bridge, the ground where the lift bridge is supposed to be will still be there, but attempting to drive on it will make you fall in the water, because in fact it's not actually here. In the countryside you'll find this very muddy lake. If you follow the water leading towards the ocean, you'll stumble upon these rocks. Approaching them, you'll notice how the water looks very shallow, but it actually is not. CJ will float in mid-air. He can dive and swim in the sky. When doing paramedic in Vice City, sometimes the patients can spawn on the street. If an angry driver spawns as well, they can run over your patients, resulting in an immediate fail out of your control. In the original San Andreas we had two hot weather cheats. One of them added heat waves on your screen, signifying how extremely hot it really is. This worked best in the desert. In the Definitive Editions both cheats are exactly the same because the heat waves are not in the game anymore. The intro of the Trilogy games used to be nice and clean with this weird looking style. In the Definitive the style was kept, but annoying scan lines were introduced as well. They are unneeded and make the footage look worse in quality. When you scroll through the radio stations fast enough, if you stop at the right moment, you can see a radio called Mixtape. This is probably the removed user track player station when people were able to listen to their own music. This apparently was once in these editions, but was later removed and now we can't upload our tracks. The barriers signifying that the Callahan Bridge in GTA 3 is closed are sometimes invisible. They do exist, but seemingly they don't. San Andreas is based in 1992, but in the strip club left of Las Venturas, there's a girl holding a smartphone on a poster. This is not faithful to the time period because phones back then look like this and not like this. Flight controls are very inconsistent between the three games, but this is the most apparent in Vice City, where each heli, RC vehicle and plane have completely different controls, all of which are tedious to use. After not touching your system for a couple minutes in San Andreas, the game will activate the IRO camera. It will attach to pedestrians, cars, happenings, the scenery and so on. Well, say goodbye to this feature in the Definitive. CJ is all you need to see forever. More music was cut by Rockstar due to licensing issues. Now nearly 70% of the 1.0 version of the soundtrack is gone. Iconic songs are now removed from the radio stations. San Andreas, for instance, lost more than 20 songs. In this field in the countryside there's a random red light just blinking here. Every night when it gets dark, this light will do its thing. It's in the nothingness. No lamp in sight, no houses, vehicles or anything else. It's just a weird placement. Your stamina runs way faster in the Definitive Edition of GTA 3. Here is me making a sprint at the beginning of the game from the same location, and look at that. In the original, Claude keeps going. This makes it even more important to complete paramedic before you do any main missions, because life without sprint is very miserable in GTA 3. Countryside windmills are now static. Wind does not exist in the Definitive Edition, I guess. They ran just fine in the original. In Vice City, when the clock reaches 2000 hours, the stadium doors should open right on schedule. It does open, but appears closed. If you don't know it opens at this time, you would stay waiting for something to happen, but nothing will. You can also go through this closed door. Typical. get your hands on a very fast car and reach top speed with it. You'll notice how some of them will sound like a truck when you reach top speed. One example is the Sultan, which sounds like a Walton at top speed. In GTA 3 and Vice City you can no longer enter vehicles while walking. The button press does not register. When you stop your character and then press the enter vehicle button, that's when they'll decide to steal it. In the stadium event called Dirt Track, some of the terrain is weird. You phase through most of the bumps on the track. Your bike will almost be completely absorbed by the dirt. The garage in Shoreside Vale is broken, and I don't just mean the sound. The two side doors should open, and most of the time they do. However, at random times the middle one will open and you won't be able to get your vehicle out unless you damage it. Some arcade games in San Andreas don't work with a keyboard. PC players can no longer play them unless they buy a controller, something which most PC players don't have. Right next to the massive beach in Vice City, close to the lighthouse, you'll find a bush. This bush contains a hidden caddy. It took me 10 years to find it my first time. Well, now in the Definitive Edition the bush does not exist, but the caddy does, ruining the mystery. When you hold the button to bunny hop on a bicycle, the bike does not stay still and keeps moving forward. This happened to some extent before, but now you simply cannot bunny hop in place. You can no longer remove the HUD and your minimap from the screen. Recording clean cinematic shots is now impossible without mods. The 90s driving test is much easier because the cars are too far apart. This used to be a challenge, but now it's a cakewalk. Speaking of this test, to complete it you hold the space for handbrake. At the end, what do? You let go of the button. But when you do, it exits out of the test because space is also used to start and end it. Some NPCs in GTA 3 carry bags, making the world feel more alive. Well, now the bags are held forward and they don't obey gravity, which makes them look fake as hell. The mission Beat Down on Beat Up has a massive increase in difficulty, and it's all because of a glitch. The bolas guarding the place will shred CJ in seconds before he could react. This is because of how the AI accuracy is handled in the Definitive Editions. Pretty poorly. Ocean water in Vice City is shallow in many places. Tell me this, doesn't this look like a place where Tommy can just walk around in? Well, turns out no, Tommy will just drown if you try. While gliding down with a parachute, you used to be able to detach it in mid-air. You can no longer do that. A similar problem is the jetpack. While previously you could not exit out in mid-air, now you can, and you could die if you're very high up. So why is this a problem? Well, because the parachute glides way too slow downwards, so exiting would be nice. The jetpack on the other hand is very quick, and accidental presses could happen which would kill CJ. When you flip a vehicle and it catches on fire, your character could also get set on fire, resulting in a death. This was never an issue before. This random ass tree on the top left edge of the map is floating in the sky, completely detached from the mountain. The same tree is properly placed in the original. Pressing the fire button while holding a flamethrower in GTA 3 will make it fire continuously. You can't fire in small bursts anymore. This is only partially true because sometimes this does not happen, making it an inconsistent glitch. When flying a plane or a helicopter, you'll see a small bar next to the minimap. This bar fills up twice, signifying the 2 levels of height CJ can reach. In the Definitive, the bar fills up only once, but only fills up halfway to the top of the world. Basically, for half of your ascent you won't know how high you actually are because the bar will tell you that you reached max altitude too early. Sometimes when you do a stunt in Vice City, the camera follows the vehicle and doesn't reset, so you cannot see anything. This sometimes happens as low as 60 FPS. The stunt plane and the crop duster have a special ability where you can activate some flares. It's a big red smoke, which makes you visible to other pilots. The smoke is now in a different color and is not very visible anymore. Of all the things they could have nerfed, they nerfed smoke. What the hell? Speaking of nerfs, races in the Los Santos and Las Venturas arenas require half of the laps they required in the original. Blue explosive canisters were completely removed from the game. They were mostly found in the countryside, like for instance next to the monster truck spawn location, but they don't exist anymore. When a vehicle explodes, it could end up floating in the air and it will never fall unless you shoot it with explosives. San Andreas now has a terrible damage system for planes. In the original it was very clear when a plane is severely damaged, judging by the massive smoke it emits. The bigger the smoke, the closer it is to exploding. In the definitive, the smoke is barely visible and some fire appears, which almost immediately disappears. This way you cannot gauge the damage received and don't know when to abandon your aircraft. In the mission ice called Killa, Xessi will escape in his pimp mobile. If you move the car before you enter the club and it's facing the ocean, when Xessi exits the club, he'll immediately die, resulting in a fail. This would be fine if a checkpoint did not trigger right after he exits out. This means that as soon as you load the checkpoint, you immediately fail and you cannot progress ever. Since the button for bunny hop and the button for horn are the same, now every time you jump on a bicycle, you always ding your bell. You can also never just ding your bell without bunny hopping. The sense of speed in San Andreas is now gone since the motion blur is now removed. Cars feel much slower now as a result, especially when you activate Nitro. The hitbox on yellow fences in the Staten Island Hospital extends beyond the fences. This creates an invisible barricade between them, making this line of fences completely solid. You cannot go in between them. Birds are now completely gone from the game. They used to add some atmosphere and realism. They made the world ever so slightly more alive, but they are no longer here. The Hydra keeps its jet or hover mode setting even after death. If you enter a new one, it won't reset to default hover mode, but use what you used last. This may catch you off guard and CJ would faceplant into a tree before you know it. Entering a hovercraft hides the player position on the minimap. You no longer know your correct position. In Area 69 you can see this grate which you use in a mission called Black Project. This grate now has a bottle on top of it. Fun fact, this bottle is in the original too, so that controllers could auto-aim onto it for easier access to the grate. Difference is that it's invisible in the original because the devs were actually competent. In the definitive it's in plain view, along with some floating grass next to it. Beautiful. After about 30-40 fares in Taxi Driver, people will no longer spawn on the street. You can't complete 100 fares in a row this way. That's because once you kill a pet, they don't despawn and chuck the memory. You can prevent this by not running over anybody, but let's be real, after 100 fares that's next to impossible, especially if you have my driving skills. I mean, sure I did it once, but just once. That's it. While underwater there was a wavy effect on the screen and some bubbles came out of CJ. Now the wavy effect is only visible in the distance and the bubbles are barely visible. The food stands are sometimes invisible. You can climb on top of them and even purchase food while they are gone. Sometimes there's no transition between weather effects. After a sandstorm for instance, the weather changes in a split second. It looks very jarring. Going from Staten Island to Shoreside Vale just before accessing the lift bridge, there's a giant plain grey road texture. Cars sink into it along with the player. Many of the lamps found way high up on the map have extended hitboxes. They extend too high up and you can stand in the air. Some important minimap icons such as mission ones will hide behind less important icons. Because of this you may think that there are no missions left on the map, but they could be hiding in plain sight. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but even thunder sounds got nerfed. Now they sound closer to grenades exploding than actual thunder. Passing all taxi missions in San Andreas normally gives you the taxi boost ability and nitro. You can do some incredible stunts stunting with the taxi boost. Well, say goodbye to this reward because now you get hydraulics, with the broken new hydraulic system which I talked about in the previous video. Yay! In the original you can mega jump with the bicycles. As soon as you jump, if you shoot, you can jump very high. In the definitive this is now impossible no matter how many times you try. To get free weapons in GTA 3 you can type guns, guns, guns. If you want more ammo, each time you type a singular guns, you'll get some. In the definitive, each time you want more ammo, you need to type the whole guns, guns, guns cheat. To look back in the Hydra you press Q and E, but pressing Q also fires rockets, so CJ constantly fires rockets as he flies. This would not be a huge issue, but since you cannot move your mouse in the Hydra, this is the only way to look back. The speeder in San Andreas is flooded. There's always water in the interior. With a keyboard you can no longer adjust the car's position in mid-air. If your car tilts in a direction, you cannot make it drop how you want. Some characters in San Andreas have special vehicles. One example is Ryder's Picador with the unique Sherm license plate. While this car is no longer unique because every Picador on the street will have a Sherm license plate. This did not happen in the original. When you buy a piece of clothing from a store, the same item will be highlighted green the next time you visit the store. This is no longer the case in the definitive. Now you gotta remember every single clothing option out of the hundreds available just so you don't accidentally buy the same item twice. In GTA 3, before unlocking the other series, you can get the 100 package very early on using a dodo. In the definitive, landing right next to it will make you float in the air. The lift bridge is still up there and the package can be collected, but you won't be able to see what you are doing. Some bushes in Bayside Marina are not solid anymore. They used to be solid, acting as walls, but now they're not and look very weird since they don't even react to you going through them. They're just static. In the preview for land, sea and air test in both school, the hovercraft starts the test from inside the sand. That sand is not supposed to be so high and that's why it looks so weird. In certain parts of the map the Sprunk logo used to be animated. This is no longer the case, it's just static. In GTA 3, right next to the safe house, you can sink into the grass. The same location was completely fine before. On the top of the parking lot right next to the pyramid in Las Venturas, the ramp is replaced by something else which you cannot use to launch yourself off the lot. This is weird because on the other side, the ramps are still ramps. CJ's head has two different textures, the one below the haircut and the top one. Each part has a different color, making CJ two different races at once. In the mission Shakedown, you're instructed to smash all store windows in the mall. There are many of them and smashing a few will bring a lot of heat, which makes the mission challenging. The challenge was completely removed from the definitive when you now need to smash only 10, which can be done in one store. The cops won't even have a chance to react. Massive nerve, hate to see it. At the beach in Palomino Creek, you can no longer enter this little shack right next to the lake, no matter how much you try to squeeze in. In GTA 3 you cannot fire upwards with a flamethrower even if you look up. Claude will still fire in front. This is not the case in the OG. The duration a car explodes at is different based on if there's a person in the car or not. It takes a car about 20 seconds to explode if there's no person inside it, but about 6 seconds if there is somebody. This makes vehicle torching inconsistent. Have you guys seen the luminosity of the Idlewood Motel? And not just the motel, but everything around it? The whole area is a lot brighter than everything else around it. This includes fences, the building and even the street. In the Autos showroom in Portland, there's a spawn location of the Banshee. Obviously it's a very desired vehicle, especially at the beginning of the game, when all you find in Portland is vans and other slow vehicles. This car used to spawn 100% of the time when you go past the shop. Well, now since the Patriot also spawns in the same showroom, the Banshee doesn't have a 100% spawn rate. Now sometimes when visiting the showroom, there will be no Banshee and you need to make circles around the whole place to get one to spawn. Next to Verona Beach there's a tunnel which was forgotten by the devs. Firstly, on top of it CJ can sink into the roof. On the inside no fence acts like a fence. You can drive and walk through them. At Ocean Docks there's a road improperly displayed on the map. The road texture is also broken. Obviously this was not a problem in the OG. Speaking of roads, what the hell is this? In Red County there's a floating grass right next to the train tracks. You go through here in the train mission for smoke. Also right next to it the ground texture does not align, and continues not being aligned for a while. When visiting some interiors in Vice City you can see the outside through the windows. Unfortunately the same windows in the Definitive are not see-through. When you put your goggles on in San Andreas, CJ plays an animation. This however is not always the case and the goggles effect activates and deactivates on the fly. In Portland we have street lamps which are aligned in accordance to the surroundings. They are oriented in a way not to disturb the train tracks, for instance. One example is here where these 3 lamp posts are aligned differently to the rest, so it doesn't mess with the train track texture. Well, in the Definitive this doesn't matter, and they're all oriented normally. When driving on the train tracks with a car, you bump into the lamp and damage your vehicle. This means that the world in the original makes sense, and in the Definitive it doesn't. In Boomshine Sagan, the white effect is completely gone, which defeats the whole purpose of the mission. Tommy should be under the influence. Near the airport in Vice City you notice this floaty place. You can drive in the air like you just don't care. There's a problem with the Jester car when you try to mod it. When you use a pre-applied paint job, purchase bumpers, and then try to paint the car a different color, the bumpers remain the previous color you chose. You can't change it. Next to the import-export ship in San Andreas you'll find this board listing all the cars which need to be delivered. Well, now there's a fake border around the names. It's not one full texture anymore, but when a new list appears, a new texture gets slapped onto the board. Speaking of meshing textures together, these windows in the internet cafe are so weird. In the original we have the top part and the bottom part. You can break each one individually and it's 100% consistent. The Definitive handles these windows horribly. You can shoot the top and sometimes both break. Sometimes only the top breaks. And sometimes even the side window breaks instead. They look haunted. Most actions have only one control option. You cannot rebind 2 or more keys to the same action, which creates problems, especially with flying. In Las Venturas, right next to the purple big blob, is a construction site. The little shacks are invisible, but the textures are still there. You can walk around on top of nothing. Vice City also has invisible stuff like this fence around the Sparrow in Vice Point. You can still slide your body across the whole fence, but you won't visibly see it there. In San Fierro at Super Safe you can find cards. In the original they have physics. In the Definitive they become ghosts when you touch them. And they don't move. Since NPCs don't have their health displayed above their heads anymore, you don't know how close you are to the completion of the Gym Moves mission. At the beginning of GTA 3 you can use a very simple and easy trick to teleport yourself to the second, yet inaccessible island early on, and this involves making a small jump on the Callahan Bridge. This trick is no longer available in the Definitive Edition and you gotta do more tedious things to achieve the same outcome. In the Archangel's mod garage, some cars float when you're trying to mod them. This is not visible from all angles, but from others it is. Before the mission deconstruction happens, in the construction site you'll see a massive hole. Only it's not a hole at all and you can walk on top of it. After the mission is complete, it's fixed. When purchasing food, the health bar is hidden, so you don't know how much you need to eat to fully heal yourself. If your budget is tight, you might overspend. Some main characters have problems holding guns in the cutscenes. Take for example Diaz in the mission Supply and Demand. He's not even holding his pistol at times. Also look at Smoke in the mission Drive-By. The guy twists the air, thinking it would do anything. And now for the biggest downgrade and the biggest problem you ever see in a video game. Rockstar should be ashamed. Listen to this. In the first zero mission air raid, when this timer shows 4 at the end, the whole clock moves right by 1 pixel. Literally unplayable. And here we go guys, 202 problems found so far and the list could go even higher if I look hard enough. If you missed the first 101, check the description for a link, leave a like if you enjoyed and a special thank you to Olavi Liikanen, Munish Parip, Epic LF, Shinte, Bad Boy Hero, xessi, Extreme Stuff, Jacob Madley, Jebediah, Versati Gwen, Jim Francesco, Kazenights, The Steve Gay Studios and everybody else.